All right. Well, I think about now is probably a good time to start rolling, just to make sure that we can stay on schedule for everyone. Welcome to everyone that's here. Welcome to the first installment of our webinar series, Leveraging Your Data to Benefit Your Stakeholders. I'm Jacob Wales, and I'm a financial analyst for 3+one, and I'll be your host today. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Peter Forsgren. Peter Forsgren is our COO and co-founder of 3+one. And before we get started, I'd like to briefly introduce you to him a little bit. He holds a master's degree in public administration from the Maxwell School at Syracuse University, and he began his career as a program analyst for the Oneida Indian Nation. And from there, he acquired 13 years of experience with a national bank until he co-founded 3+one in June of 2014. He's a father of 5 and currently the school board president of a district with 5,683 students in the Rochester area. If you have any questions, we have allotted 10 minutes at the end of this presentation, and we will open the floor to any questions you have at that time. But feel free, as we present this to you, to enter any questions that you have at the time into the chat function here with this presentation, and we can get to them as soon as we hit the end of the webinar. With that, Peter, I have my first question of the day for you. What is 3+one, and what does this organization do?
Jake, thanks for the introduction and for the question. The simple answer, which I don't think is a very fun answer, but it's simple, right, is we're a data fintech company, so data financial technology. But the fun part, at least to someone like me who's more of the data geek side, is what you're seeing on the screen, right, is taking so much data that's out there and trying to make sense of it, turning it into something that becomes really valuable. And so we get to do all that. We get data from all different places. And then internally, we've written algorithms and all the ways of how do you start making sense so that indeed you're sorting it and arranging it and visualizing it. And that visualization to me has always been where the fun part is. What's those aha moments when you start seeing patterns that pop out? And although I go back perhaps to some of my college days and a professor who haunts me to this day, and perhaps I should seek some help, is statistic professor who said, if you don't graph it, I'm going to fail you. And that's where those aha moments come. And those are the fun things we get to do. But it doesn't stop there, because what do? We want to do much more than that, though, than even what's here is, yeah, we've sorted it and we arranged it, but we have to get to the end part where there's this house. And that it's actually valuable that we've sorted data and we've arranged it and we found trends and patterns. And one of my passions in this company has always been that a report produce something that comes to fruition as well. You noted I sit on a school board, and in the first couple of years of that school board experience, we were paying consultants and we would get a report and it was, inch thick, and then it collected dust. And it was like, no more of that. We don't need to pay to get a report that sits on my desk and collects stuff. We need to bring this to life. We need this data, these algorithms, these patterns, everything we're seeing to actually come to fruition. And so when my fun ends, other people in our organization's fun starts to begin, because they're able to speak the language from the banking side and from the internal accounting side and from the data side. They bring all those parts together, and they, on behalf of who they're serving, they can bring this alive and find real value. So yes, we're a data fintech, but we want to find value that's out there and help ensure that every dollar, everything we're assessing brings value back to the organization that we're serving. And who can it apply to? Well, it can apply to everybody, but our passion, ours being Joe Rulison and I as the co-founders, but I think everybody in our organization, all the employees, all of us together, has a passion really for the public sector, for higher ed, hospital systems, and this is where we really get to practice our trade.
And speaking of everybody, I know one question that I get from almost everybody when I mention the company I work for is, why the name? Why 3+one? Where does the name come from, and how was that decided?
I can't take any credit. It's a marketing genius of my business partner, Joe Rulison. If you know him, you can start seeing that. But even he will admit that perhaps sometimes it's better lucky than good that we serendipity, whatever that word is, it came across 3+one. But it really is some genius. And it happened back even in 2012, before he and I had decided to quit our jobs and start this. And the logo has changed several different times, and you can see that kind of in the top corner, but it works for us on many different levels. And when we first started, it was kind of easy. There were 3 employees, but the gold box is always, which never changes for us, has always represented our clients, those who we are serving. It's always about end you, and that's kind of what we say. So the 3 can be anything. And at the time we started, it kind of worked. There were three employees, Joe, me, and one other, right? And so that was 3, and then plus 1 the client. And then we had another employee that still kind of worked with the math, 3 plus 1, the 4th person. And suddenly it breaks down real quick when we talk about people, because now we're well beyond 3 plus 1 for the number of people. But the 1 is always the client. And here's how it can work for us on many different levels. The 3 can stand for so many different things: data, analysis, and insight. That's some of the values we want to bring as we gather data, we analyze it, we provide insight, and then we give it to you, always about you, the client. It can apply to another set of 3, right? Borrowing, banking fees, investments, bringing all that back to the client, to you. Public institutions, higher ed, hospital systems, right? Another 3, all 3 of those organizations, but it's always about the one we're serving at the time. So that our name of our company always reminds us we're serving you. You are the gold box. You are the standard. And our mission, our effort is to really to serve you. And so we try and ask ourselves in that 3 plus 1 arena is, what is your mission? How do we help you fulfill it? Because we know financial resources are kind of the lifeblood of any organization. And so if you're a school district, what is it that you need? And how does making sure you maximize the value of your cash assets help you hire perhaps another mental health counselor, or technology purchases? If you're a county, can you enhance your maintenance programs of your fleet? All the different areas where you might have shortages here and there, but if you maximize the value of your assets, you're able to know you can serve their people, or the constituents, which is all of us. And so that's the emphasis. 3 plus 1, 1 being the client. That's our focus.
That's fantastic. To circle back a little bit too, as we touched on in the beginning, you had a very successful career before 3 plus 1, working at a national bank and as a program analyst. And you were mentioning when 3 plus 1 was first starting, it was you, Joe Rulison, and one other employee. What actually made you decide to leave a successful career and take a chance on 3 plus 1?
Yes, some might question our sanity, Jake, if they were honest at our age, Joe's and I's age, whether that was really the wise thing to do. And if you know my business partner, which you do, and I hope many other people on this call do, his excitement, his belief, his enthusiasm, that's hard to fight. And, I've known Joe since I was in college getting my master's program. And, all of that, there was just so much that came together. So yes, I got some experience myself in the public sector. Then I was suddenly at a bank. And that really complemented well the experience I had achieved in both the short career I had in the public sector, but also in my master's program. But the first class I took in master's program was an accounting class. And now so I'm at a bank, and talk about a different perspective, right? That the actual cash flowing through looks so much different than a ledger book or, the general ledger system that you have. And taking the power of what we were gaining with bank experience, what we learned about services, and understanding on the public side, because Joe's also a public servant like I am in terms of a board member, and taking all this and bringing it together, there's real power in all that information. And we realized that by bringing it out together, that there's services that can be provided that can enhance the value of cash assets. We did see a lot of value kind of being dissipating. And so I hope it was a successful career at Bank of America where I was. I'm glad you didn't ask anybody there, just in case they wanted to contradict that. But coming out and saying, hey, there's been enough experience that we've gained there. There's so much more we can take that experience and apply it to, and we think it can be a real value to the public sector. It is where Joe and I have a real passion, and we wanted to apply that to higher ed, to the public sector, and have them see the benefit of the cash asset that they have on hand.
And I think you guys were able to create something truly special here. And with that in mind, we've talked a lot about what 3 plus 1 does and what we can do with the data, but what is the mission of 3 plus 1?
If I haven't emphasized it necessarily, our passion is higher ed, public sector. But as a fintech company, to really drive innovation, use innovation and technology, data to bring value, to add new sources of revenue that support those who really support the rest of us, right? I mean, these individuals are always serving the rest of us here in the community in so many different ways. And that's our mission. It really comes down to that. Again, the gold box, and not to overkill it, is just remind us to serve them and think about all that they do. And why do we have this mission? Why do we have this value? The core value of exceeding expectations. Why all of that? Well, when the snowstorm hits, and you and I know what that's like, who's out there serving the rest of us, right, clearing the streets? When COVID hit, how important was higher education, learning about how, that the need to educate our children suddenly just becomes forefront of mind, otherwise we take it for granted. Natural disasters that we'll see on the news and perhaps unfortunately experience ourselves. First responders. They do so much for us through challenging times, but they do so much for us when it's not challenging times, right? On a day-to-day basis, just maintaining the roads, fixing those potholes. Yeah, we'll complain a little bit, but potholes pop up all the time. And, parks and recreation areas, all the different things that happen day in and day out. Our mission is to try and serve these organizations. And we can use innovation, technology, and data to do that. And by the way, that's another three, right? Innovation, technology, and data to serve you, the client, have it really become valuable to you. So that's been our mission, and our passion is around that area.
And now I know another name that's heard a lot when people are talking about coming on to 3+1 or hearing about 3+1 is the name cashVest. What exactly is cashVest?
This is one of those stories where in some ways I still get remember the electricity of the moment when cashVest, the word, kind of came up and how it's grown from that point. It really is the main service, the foundation of all of our services, because we have more than just the cashVest service itself, but underlying almost anything we do is cashVest. But if you don't mind, I'm going to give a little bit of the history of that in terms of where it came from. When there were still just three of us, and we're in a single room office, and Joe and I, Nick, the other employee, all sitting there together. We can hear everybody's conversations, right? And thankfully we all get along just wonderful, but we've only done a few. We have less than 10 clients, and we realize we need to provide a mechanism that measures progress, but encourages progress at the same time. Now, I have a teaching background. My undergraduate degree was in education, and I held a teaching certificate for a little while, and didn't want this necessarily to come across as a grade, but did want it to encourage progress, to also measure that progress was being made, and that we can get people to the next level and get them at a level where they're consistently feeling that, hey, our cash assets are indeed providing us as much value as is possible under the current circumstances. And so we're sitting around and we're talking about that, and that's where you have those moments, and through discussion, multiple people, multiple perspectives, we start ideating on this score and the elements of the score, and we called that cashVest. So originally it was really just the score itself that we then now have made to encompass everything that we do. And sure, initially we had to tweak it. We only had, I think I mentioned fewer than 10. And so making sure that the score was applicable across a broader group of organizations, right? It just didn't apply to school districts or counties, but it could be applicable to universities and community colleges, hospital systems, and then villages, towns, counties, the works. It didn't matter which. And so there was some tweaking along the way. But getting it to be that, and then cashVest is all of it. So it encompasses the aggregation of banking data, service fees, the analysis itself, running the various models, and then reporting it back to our customers in such a way that, again, it doesn't sit on the desk, but utilizing then the brain power of so many people that now work here to be able to speak the language and get it to be something. And as I said, it's not leaving that written report, it's having all that come to life. cashVest happens when it comes to life. So it's not just the data fintech itself, but when it's come to life and you're seeing greater value out of your cash assets, that's when we have cashVest.
And with that in mind, why has cashVest been deemed the best practice for liquidity management?
I suppose this could sound like I'm might be trying to break my arm, pat ourselves on the back, right? But we live in a day and age that's data driven. it is the nature of what we do that I think helps it to be a best practice. How many times have you been presented in life with choices, and without easy access or not necessarily having good information, the choice we will tend to make by default is the safe one. And especially that should apply in areas where we are taxing people or taking tuition many times with students and families are borrowing money. And we want to make sure that there's no loss of this money that we've taken from people. And we have a responsibility. So we've always felt that managing that is the appropriate thing to do. But it doesn't mean that you have to give up on its value. Cash does have real value. There's always a need. I think of it because I guess the nature of what we do, I'm constantly thinking of that cash really is the grease out there that runs our economy in many different ways. So when any organization, anybody wants to build a new building, you need the cash, you need to borrow it. So somebody wants to borrow it, somebody must have that pocket of cash. And public entities from time to time throughout the year can be sitting on large pockets of cash. That means it has value because somebody else wants to borrow that temporarily, build a building, invest in technology, do something with it. And so the best practice that we think it is because now you're able to make data-driven decisions that keep your cash position safe, but doesn't give up on the value that's out there in the marketplace. So you're able to make data-driven, effective decisions. And on top of that, I think do it effectively, do it efficiently. And in my career and all the different organizations I've met with across this country, and I consider myself very blessed that in my career with Bank of America and others, I was able to travel, meet with so many different government entities and higher ed institutions. I have never once seen a slow finance office. I think of it in our school district. People think, okay, budget season's over, we passed the budget. It starts the next day, right? The finance office is never slow. You're closing out the books for the prior month. There's always something to approve. You're borrowing, you're looking at next projects. There's auditors in and out and different levels of auditing going on. Never have I seen. So being able to make a quick decision that impacts the value of those assets that you have in your hand, that is why it can be a best practice is you have information is presented to you in a concise way and allows you then to make a quick decision that also gives you this comfort level that I'm making a safe decision as well, but that I feel like I am doing my responsibility to maximize its value so I can report back to whoever those stakeholders are and say, we have done the best with the cash that we have received from you. And we turned it into something of value as well. Not just receive value, but we turn it into something of value. Again, what's the mission of your organization? Education? Is it public services, parks and recs, first responders? We're able to turn it into something. And so best practice is being able to do something well with good information and in a timely way. And I think that's why it gets deemed as a best practice.
Awesome. Well, Peter, those are all the questions that I have for you today. We're going to now open the floor to if anyone else has any questions. And if you do, please enter them into the chat function of this presentation at the bottom there. And I actually had a couple questions that were directly messaged to me in the middle of this presentation. So first one, it says here is, what does the product or deliverable actually look like?
Oh, what timing of a question. I love the timing of this question because we are about to roll out an online interactive cashVest portal, right, for all of our clients. And historically, so that's going to happen in the next couple days, weeks. It's not a month or more. It's happening here real soon. And so the whole question is about to get a different answer. And I'm going to give that new answer. That's an online where you'll be able to interact with those graphs, be able to see your data, you'll be able to see your models. So we do short-term forecasting and we do stress tests. You'll be able to see all that online and be able to do it every day. What has it looked like? Where are we progressing? It has been a PDF report, and you could always pick up the phone and talk, and you'll be able to do that, of course, going forward. But it's going from something that was a PDF report, again, that part of my brain that says, I don't want this report to sit on somebody's desk, is now converting into an online experience and being able to be accessible to people, back to that best practice. So accessible in a real time way, they can bring it up, they can look at their information, see what's going on, peruse perhaps their list of fixed income investments, CDs, and see when it's maturing and whatnot. I just think it's an exciting time to ask that question, what's it look like, how's it delivered? It's about to become an online experience.
And it looks like we have another question that came in here, and it is, how do you guarantee the security of client data?
Good question. The day and age in which we live, wow, top priority. So a little over a year ago, we went ourselves under an audit. We hired a company, said, come in, we've been small and haven't been able to do it, but we need to make sure we're keeping our ducks in a row and our security. They did a risk profile to see, one, what was our risk profile? Where were the weak areas? Immediately we grabbed that and made changes, adding in multi-factor authentication. Either you have to get an email or on your phone, other codes. But then we look to providers. So we are cloud-based in everything. We do not have on-site servers, and so people can't log into our computers and wiggle their way into an on-site server. We don't store it there. We look to our providers, which is Amazon Web Services, AWS, and Google. Paid services, not the free ones necessarily that are out there, so that we get all the security that they say to themselves. That's the language within their environments. And these are reports that they provide, SOC 2. I wish I could remember off the top of my head what that stands for right now. Some security audit. And so we read through those and we make sure that our partners are providing the highest level of security. That's where the information is stored. And again, not here locally, but then we have other layers of security, even internally. So we know where that data is. We have people assigned who can have access to certain things and others who don't. And with all that, it's a high priority to keep it safe. It's also in how we store it. Truncating account numbers, for example, we only ever see last four digits. So there's never a whole number being presented to individuals on these reports and things. So we take it seriously. We are now in the process of going through ISO 27001, as long as I get that right, ISO being the international standards, of going through each of the steps and becoming compliant with those standards. So those are the highest standards. We looked at there's a NIST standard, there's New York State standards. We just went right to the ISO 27001 to say that's the standard, it's the highest one, let's go for that. It's important information. We need to keep it safe.
Great. And if we don't have any more questions right now, it's about time that we've hit the end of our webinar here. We hope you all enjoyed this presentation. If you think of any questions that you forgot to ask, please feel free to reach out to any member of our team and we'd be happy to answer. Our next installment, Stress Test Duration Capability, How Much and How Long Will I Have This Cash, will be hosted by Bill Cherry, Director of Public Partnerships, and is scheduled for February 24th at 2 p.m. EST. We hope you'll join us then, and a replay of this presentation can be found on our website in the coming days. Thank you all again for coming, and we hope you enjoyed our time.
Thank you.